all yelled out Super Bowl Sunday. This group over here who was saved full of the Holy Ghost, they yelled out Communion Sunday. So to stop a fight from brewing, we called it Communion Super Bowl Sunday. All right. There is an outline there in your bulletin if you'd like to follow along. What's the title of today's message? Made for a mission, stay on course. Now, today, the New York Giants and the New England Patriots are on a mission to win the NFL's greatest prize, which is the Super Bowl. Now, this is the game all NFL teams try so hard to reach. Now, in the last game of the season, several of the teams who had already made the playoffs, they took some of their best players out of the last game, and they wanted them ready to go when they reached the playoffs. Interesting enough, the teams that took this strategy lost in the early rounds of the playoffs. Instead of giving all their very best to the very end of the regular season, somehow they lost their momentum of that desiring to win. They thought that a loss at the end of the season was not really going to matter since they had already made the playoffs. But in taking that time off, they lost something. They got off course, and they paid a penalty for it. Now, New England is coming into the Super Bowl with an undefeated season, and no other team has won 18 straight games in a single season. New York would like nothing more than to spoil New England's perfect record. Now, God has each of you on a mission for a perfect winning season in 2008. And Satan would like nothing better than to turn your season into a disaster and a humiliating defeat. Let me introduce you to someone who is a little known nobody. Say nobody. Nobody whom God lifted up and moved him to the top of his game. If he had been a rapper, it would have been like him singing in the basement downstairs in the fellowship hall along with me at his side, and then being transported into platinum CDs with all kind of money. If he had been a basketball player, it would have been like somebody that sat the bench the entire season, his high school year, and then went on to become the MVP of the NBA. If he had been a businessman, it would have been like somebody who had just failed miserably time after time after time, and finally getting that business earning him $5 million a year. This guy had been a shepherd boy on the backside of a hill, and nobody really expected too much to come out of him. But God saw something in his heart that he could use. And even before this guy knew what was going on, God had sent the prophet Samuel to anoint him with oil so that he might become king of Israel. This young boy's name was David. Now, David started out as a young boy who offered to fight a giant. Nobody believed he could succeed except him and God. David quickly rose through the military ranks and went from being just a low-level enlisted man all the way to being general leader of the entire army. And God gave David victory after victory, and later with the death of King Saul, David himself becomes the king. And after he becomes king, once again, he has one string of military victories after another. None of David's enemies are able to stand against him. And David knew that his strength was from God. David was so glad for what God had done for him that he wanted to build a temple for God. But God sent the prophet Nathan to tell David, no, you are not to build the temple for me, but your son will do it. And David was so overwhelmed with the goodness of God that he said in Samuel 7:18 through 19, he says, who am I, O sovereign Lord, and what is my family that you have brought me this far? And if this were not enough in your sight, O sovereign Lord, you have also spoken about the future of the house of your servant. Is this your usual way of dealing with men, O sovereign Lord? Can you see how humble David was? He's like, God, I realize you brought me and my family from nothing, and you have made us ruler of your people. And after this prayer, David understood that he had been made for a mission, which was to bring glory and honor back to this awesome God that was at work in his life. In chapter 8 in the book of 2 Samuel, we see David is finding more victories in battle in the Lord. In chapter 9, we see him on a mission of showing kindness and forgiveness in which he is successful. In chapter 10, we find David on a mission once again in battle against armies that are far larger than his own. And because of God's hand upon him, his enemies are totally destroyed and defeated. And as a ruler and as a leader, David is now at the top of his game. There is no one on the horizon that seems to be capable of taking him down. You know, one of the greatest mistakes we can make is to think, I got it so together that nobody can possibly take me down. You see, that feeling never comes from God. It is always a lie from Satan himself, because God tells all of us to be careful and to watch and to pray. Because we find in 1 Peter 5:8, it says, be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls round like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Tell your neighbor, he's looking for you. Now, in tonight's Super Bowl game, even though these guys are huge and humongous, neither team has the sole strategy of, we just going to knock up against them and knock up against them until they fall or we fall. That's not what their strategy is going to be. If you look up in those booths, they've got people up in the booths, they've got people on the sideline who are looking at the other team trying to find a weakness that they can exploit. Both teams have plans to use deception to make you think they're doing one thing when in reality they are doing something else. But they hope you won't recognize what they are doing until it's too late. When I was a sophomore in high school, my first year of football, I played defensive end on this side, right side. And the coach would tell me to stay at home. Now, for those of you who are not football players, he wasn't telling me not to show up for the game. He was saying, stay in your position. Because since I was a defensive end, my job was to guard all this area over here. And the coach would tell me to stay at home, even though I could see the other team running the ball that way. My natural desire was to run over there and make the play. But the coach would say, stay at home. There was a reason he said stay at home, because the other team had a play that was based on me not listening to the coach. It's called a reverse, where everybody goes that way, and everybody is tempted to go that way after them. The only thing is, there's one guy over there who's going to come back this way with the ball. And when they pitch it to him and he comes this way, if I stay at home, I'm here to make the play. If I don't, I'm over there trying to get back. The only problem is they've set up blockers over here in the middle way so that I cannot get back to where I'm supposed to be. I want you to know that Satan has some great reverse plays. Tell your neighbor, wake up. He's already got you. Okay, Satan, see that he done put some of y'all to sleep already, and you ain't even in the game yet. Now, Satan has some great reverse plays. He makes it look like the good time is over there. That's where you want to be. So we go running off over there, and then when we get over there, we realize, wait a minute, it's going the other way. And we want to desperately get back to where we used to be, only he got all kind of blocks in